My name is Marsha Skrypuch, and I'm a children's author. And today is Holodomor Remembrance Day. Maybe you don't know what the Holodomor was, so I'll tell you. In the 1930s, in Soviet Ukraine, Stalin decided that he wanted to kill all the Ukrainians. He did that by putting soldiers around the borders of the country and removing the grain. And it became a crime to hold grain in your hand. To eat grain it meant that you were a traitor and you could be shot. Stalin described the Holodomor by saying that one death is a tragedy, but 1 million deaths is a statistic. And the very fact that you probably have never heard of the Holodomor before kind of verifies that fact. And also what's happening in Ukraine right now is really another genocide. It's another war. And it's lost all meaning for most people. It's been off the radar, even though it's in its second year, and people are being killed by the Russian Federation every single day. So I want to read a selection from my latest book, Winterkill, set during the Holodomor, about one death. And this takes place, it's witnessed by Alice and Neil, and they're walking through the famine lands to escape, and they encounter someone. "What are you thinking about?" Neil asked Alice. "About how beautiful all this was," she said, raising her arms to include the sky, the fields, the meadows. "There's so much potential for happiness here, for goodness." "You're right about that," I said. We walked in silent contemplation for a couple of kilometers and then encountered a village. The clay cottages with their straw thatch roofs seemed achingly familiar, and in normal times I would have expected to see some chickens clucking around and maybe a cow in the pasture, but these were not normal times. In the heat of August, the village was quiet like winter. No people, no birds, no insects. We followed the dirt road deeper into the village, and I wrinkled my nose at the stench. Alice put a hand over her mouth. She could smell it too. It was fainter than in Kharkiv, but unmistakable. At a time of year when everything should be bursting with life, this village was filled with death. We kept on walking, our heads bowed in sadness, past what had been the village square, and past where a church had been, but now it was just rubble. Reclining against a doorstep in the last house was a young girl, maybe 6 years old. At first I thought she was dead, but then she slowly opened her eyes. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. We went up to her and knelt beside her. "Bread?" she whispered. I opened my shoulder bag. I had a small piece of soft bread left from the night before. I placed it in her hand. The girl tried to bring it up to her lips, but she was too weak. I broke off a bit and I put it between her teeth, but her mouth was too dry. Alice took the tin from her bag and went to the back of the house. She reappeared moments later with the tin can filled with water. She held it to the girl's lips, and the girl took a sip. Once she had swallowed a bit of water, I placed the bread back on her tongue. She closed her mouth and slowly chewed. A smile transformed her face. "That is the most beautiful meal I have ever tasted," said the girl. "I can die happy now." We stayed sitting with the girl and offered her more bread, but she said that she was full. "Can you sing to me?" she asked. I have a terrible singing voice, but I started a kolisanka that Mama sang to me as a baby about rocking in a cradle. It was one that Uncle Ilya and Auntie Paulina had recorded in their manuscript. Alice knew it too, and she joined in. The little girl looked so content, and we sang it over and over. I thought the girl had fallen asleep, but Alice put her fingers to the girl's neck. "She's no longer with us," she said. We didn't want to leave her sitting in the doorway. In the end, I carried her gently in my arms to the church cemetery, and we laid her body down on one of the graves. Alice and I wrapped our arms around each other and wept. We had been so immersed in death for so long that I thought that we had become hardened to it. But seeing this little girl die before our eyes was a breaking point. We don't even know her name, I said. She wasn't alone when she died, said Alice. She gathered up a handful of dirt and sprinkled it over the girl. Together we sang Vichnaya Pamyat. And then we walked out of the village and down the road. I hope that you're able to think of people in Ukraine right now who are fighting for their lives and who Putin would like to see dead. And think of the millions who died during the Holodomor in 1930. In the 1930s, the forgotten millions. Thanks for listening.